Welcome to the most comprehensive TanStack Router tutorial on YouTube. Today we're diving deep into this revolutionary routing solution that's rapidly gaining popularity in the React ecosystem. TanStack Router is a modern routing library that puts type safety at its core, offering a developer experience that feels almost magical. Now stable and production ready, it's changing how developers approach routing in web applications by catching errors at compile time rather than runtime. In this tutorial, we'll build an application with nested routes, data loading, authentication, and more, all with full type safety from URL to component. What sets TanStack Router apart is its unique approach that combines file-based routing convenience with programmatic routing power. You'll see how its TypeScript integration creates a fully type-safe experience from URL parameters to search query and route data. You're gonna learn almost anything related to TanStack Router from this application and tutorial. Let's dive in and explore how this technology can transform your applications with its elegant API and robust type system. But before we continue, please hit that like and subscribe button to help others discover this tutorial too. First, we need to create a simple React application with Vite. In the current directory, here select React and TypeScript plus establish-c. Then install all of the packages. Perfect. Then we need to install all of the required dependencies for application. First of all, we need to install the TanStack Router itself and also the DevTools, which is the React Router DevTools package. Perfect. Then we need to install the plugin of TanStack Router for Vite by installing this dev dependencies, which is called TanStack Router plugin. Hit enter. Perfect. Now to style our application, I prefer to use Tailwind here. So install these packages on our application and also the Tailwind merge to create some custom styles, but that's it. Hit enter. And also we need Zod for our runtime type checks because we can validate the search queries and query parameters on the URL using this library to make things more type safe. Perfect. Now head over to the file explorer here and remove the app.css file here. Almost remove everything here from app.tsx. Just return a simple app text here. And then inside the index.css file, remove almost everything. And later on, we're going to add Tailwind config here. Now we need to head over to the vite.config.ts file to introduce the TanStack Router plugin for our Vite bundler. Because there are so many things happening under the hood for TanStack Router and its type-safe system to work. So it needs to manipulate with file systems and so much other stuff. So we need to add TanStack Router plugin here in the plugins array. So here I need to first of all import TanStack Router from TanStack Router plugin /Vite here. Then make sure you are adding it before the React plugin here. And inside it, we need to provide some configs. First of all, our target is React. Also, this supports Solid and other frameworks. We can read the documentation, but here we're going to use React for the target. And also, I want to enable the code splitting that it's done by TanStack Router without any additional configs here, which is a powerful feature that it handles almost everything related to code splitting for our project, like handling loadings, when to cache, error components, loader components, how to handle prefetching while doing code splitting. Also, I need to import Tailwind CSS for styling our application. Then before everything here, just add Tailwind CSS plugin. And also because I really prefer to use absolute import path instead of relative path, first of all, I need to provide resolve here for Vite config. But keep in mind that this is only my preference and this is not related to tutorial, but it's a good practice. So I need to change the alias for @path to path.resolve. And the address that I want this to be resolved is the files inside src folder. Hit save. And then I need to import path from path. And to fix this error, we need to install types/node as a dev dependency. So open up your terminal and install the node types like this as the dev dependencies, and the error will be gone. Perfect, hit save, and then head over to the tsconfig.app.json here, and then we need to also change the import alias for TypeScript compiler by adding a path value here, and then I'm going to map here everything with this address to this address on my src folder. Perfect, hit save. Now just head over to the index.css file here. First of all, we need to import the Tailwind CSS, as simple as this. Now our project is enhanced by Tailwind, and to make things simpler for this tutorial, because we are not here to style application, I have prepared only a few utility classes for application that we are gonna use them for our components, which there are only a few of them, like I don't know, 10 or 15 classes. For example, our card component, which is gonna be this style, heading style, title style, our buttons and inputs. That's it, very simple. Also, you can check out the description down below to find the completed code and repository, and you can find all of these extra boilerplate stuff in that repository, and you can copy and paste them here if you want to follow along with the tutorial. Or you can use your own custom styles and even different component library solutions. Hit save. Also, if you head over to the TanStack Router documentation itself and inside the quick start route, you can see that we could easily set up our project with TanStack Router easily, but I really prefer the manual setup here, that we are gonna go into it step by step, and we are gonna learn that how everything is working. So let me just close everything, and to make TanStack Router work, first of all, I need to create a new folder inside the src folder called exactly routes. And here in this new folder, we need to add another file called __ root.tsx file, and then without doing anything, just run your development server by using npm run dev in your terminal. And as you can see here, everything is handled for us automatically because we have added the TanStack Router plugin to our Vite and Vite server, and whenever we run our project, there is a watcher on TanStack Router that is listening to file changes here and will automatically do many boilerplate stuff for us, like this. For example, it added a new simple component with the hello text here and an outlet that will render our other routes inside here exactly below this hello text here. You might wondering that why TanStack Router is working like this and it's automatically adding or changing files for us. This is because the TanStack Router provides for us a very great developer experience by providing an amazing type safety by looking for file changes and automatically generating this route tree.gen.ts file that is responsible to provide a very amazing type safety for our project. So we do not need to change this file manually, and all of it's done automatically by looking into the routes folder files, their hierarchy and their changes, and this file will be automatically updated. Also pay attention that you do not need to add this file to your gitignore or anything else because it's a part of your project, although it's being automatically generated. But during working with TanStack Router library, I have encountered some issues because this file will be automatically generated or modified or updated. But whenever this happens, the VS Code will open this file automatically on my system and it will interfere with the TanStack Router plugin itself on our Vite bundler. So we need to add this file and tell VS Code to ignore it. To do that, I need to open the user settings, the JSON version of it, and wherever that you want, you need to add these few lines of codes to prevent the route tree file to be changed by VS Code, because if you don't do this, it will be really annoying, and anytime that a very small change happens to this file, you're gonna encounter some issues. So add these files to your VS Code or what ID that you're using. Now hit save and close it, and also close this file and everything here. Now let's create our first routes. The first one is our main route, and if we create it, you see that everything is happening for us automatically. And this field corresponds to the root URL of our application because we have used index.tsx, because index is a reserved word for TanStack Router. And also imagine that we have another page for our About Us page. And as you can see, the route address and everything is handled for us automatically. Then if I close everything, you see that everything is being saved automatically. And now if you head over to application, we see that nothing has been added here to our project because we need to change our app.tsx file. So open the app.tsx file and then create a router here by using the create router method provided by TanStack Router. And we need to provide a route tree here. So we need to import exactly our route tree from this location here. And to make everything simpler, just remove the extra route tree here. Then instead of returning a simple app here, we need to return the router provider. And then I need to pass and provide the router for our router property here. Perfect. Now, all of the type safety features and great developer experience will come from this part. The TanStack Router is using a trick called module augmentation of TypeScript that it's enhancing the installed TanStack Router library itself with the types of our routery.gen.ts file by enhancing the register interface of the TanStack Router library. So we need to provide the type of our router to the router type of register interface, and that's it. We are directly manipulating and changing the types on our installed TanStack Router package. So we need to do this, hit save. Now we need to design our simple navbar for application. So head over to the __ root.tsx file, and this is the main entry to application. And here I'm gonna create two links, import link from React Router itself, then close it like this. And then I'm gonna pass a to property. And if I open the IntelliSense of my IDE by hitting Ctrl/, you're gonna see that all possible routes that can be here, which is pretty amazing. And all of them are type safe. So for example, I cannot pass anything that it's not on this routes folder, and I need to only pass and use IntelliSense like this. And then inside it, instead of closing it like this, I simply name this link, for example, main page on my navbar. And whenever this link is active, I can pass the active props property. And for the class name of it, class name, I simply pass, for example, text blue 500, and I'm going to change the font to bold. Then I need to copy and paste it and do the same, but for example, this time for About Us page, and change the pass to About page. And now here, you see that whenever we head over to the main page, you see that the text here is bold and blue. And whenever we head over to the About Us, you're going to see that the correct route is showing, and also the style of our navbar item has been changed. If you're finding this tutorial helpful so far, please hit that like button to help others discover it too. Perfect. Now that we have set up TanStack Router for our project and we used some basic implementation of it, we need to discuss a little bit about the file namings conventions in TanStack Router, that why index.tsx is recognized as our root URL address, but the about is recognized as about address. If you head over to the official TanStack Router documentation and head over to the file naming conventions, you see that there are multiple files here, file names here. One of them is the main root.tsx that we just discussed earlier, which is the main entry for application. And then we are going to get familiar with all of these here. Just keep in mind that the file namings inside the routes folder is really important. For example, dot has a different meaning, $, prefixes, suffixes, underscores, dashes, parentheses, square brackets, index, and route.tsx files, which we're gonna discuss and learn all of them by using and creating a very practical example. And if you're coming from other routing solutions like Next.js and Remix, you might be familiar with most of the special routes here. For example, the route grouping in Next.js is very similar, and also the catch-all route, which is presented in remix by asterisk, here is presented by $, because in file routing systems, the asterisk might be troublesome for file watchers and other stuff, and using $, is a better option. And that is almost all of it. Now we need to head over to application and get familiar with the usage of this. Now close everything here. First of all, I need to add some utility functions inside the lib/utils.ts file. And then here, I'm gonna simply just create a cn function that you might be familiar with it to merge CSS classes while creating custom components, and also a fake wait function to simulate a fake backend system that we're gonna implement very easily to mock and fake a real backend for application by providing some delay to it, because I want to show you how prefetching, preloading, and pending components are working with TanStack Router. Now save it and head over to the root.tsx file, and here imagine that I want to encapsulate the link logic here for our navbar items, or in other words, I want to create a custom navbar link component, which is pretty easy here. We can create custom links for different purposes, and even we can get link components from different UI libraries like MUI or other solutions, and create different link components or link buttons with this way that I want to show you. To do that, inside the routes folder, create a new folder called components, -components. The starting dash is very important. And inside it, create our custom nav link. For example, I want to call it nav-link.tsx. The reason that we need to add a starting dash here is that, first of all, everything here in the routes folder is affecting our file system routing. And also, it's a very good practice to collocate your components files and logics near each other. So for example, because I wanted to use my nav link inside the root file here, I really prefer to put this file nearest to this root.tsx file, but without breaking the structure of my routes. So by adding a dash prefix here to whatever that you want, whether it's a file, it's a folder, you're gonna remove them to be considered as a route. So for example, inside the browser, if I head over to the components route, you're gonna see a not found error because the routes starting or folders starting with the prefix dash are not considered a route. And for example, I can create different folders with different purposes and ignore them by TanStack Router. Now inside the nav-link component itself, first of all, I need to specify the type for my custom link component. So I'm gonna start with the native HTML anchor or a tag element, and also you can enhance this component with other properties that you need to pass from parent to this component. But for this tutorial, the native anchor tag is more than enough. And then here, imagine that we have our custom link component here. But if you are using a different UI component library solution, instead of creating these, you can directly pass to create link method that we're gonna see in a few moments. But imagine that we are creating this component from scratch. So here, I'm gonna create and return a simple a tag for now, and for the inputs of it, I'm gonna get the class name and rest of the properties from this type here, and also I can easily get the ref from the parent if I want in React Native without the help of forward ref method. So do this, and to use the reference or ref object here, just pass it here, then spread the properties. And also because I want my nav links to have a consistent style, I simply use the cn function that we just created earlier. I'm gonna pass the navlink CSS class from the index.css that we just created earlier. Let me just show you. This is exactly here. Then I'm gonna merge the default class name with the class name that I want to pass from parent to this component. And after that, we need to create another component called whatever that you want. I prefer it to be created link component. And then I'm gonna use the create link from React Router, TanStack Router, to enhance my basic link component. with so many routing capabilities. And after that, we need to export our desired nav link, and then we are going to use this component inside our other components. Then for the type of it, just simply use the link component from React Router, and as a generic, pass the type of the basic link component, and then create a simple arrow component, and then return the created link component here with the enhanced properties. So first of all, I need to destruct the properties, and for the default active properties, I simply pass the class name of active navlink, which has a bolder version of the default. And also you can, for example, pass preload as intent or whatever options that you want. But for now, the active props here is more than enough. And then we're going to learn other properties. And I just wanted to show you how you can enhance your link components or buttons with the core of React Router link component. And that's it. It's safe. And to use it, just head over to your root.tsx file. And here, instead of passing link, just pass the nav link. And there is no need for us to pass the active props here. Let me just remove this and also do the same for this. And then no need to pass the active props again here. But I realized that I did a mistake inside the navlink component. Instead of getting ref like this, you need to just use the React 19 feature and see it as other properties, your reference object here. Now, if you head over to our file here, you see that errors are gone. And then I just simply do a little bit styling here. I just add a container class name, and then I'm gonna center everything with the maximum width of XL here. And then I'm gonna create a container for the nav links. And for example, I'm gonna add a space of 2 between them. And also I don't need this link anymore. And also remove this import here. And there is no need to change the outlet position because I need all of my routes to be rendered exactly below the nav bar here. Hit save. And here, as you can see, if I click on the main page, it has different style, it's bolder, and all of my nav links from this point are gonna be the same style-wise. One thing that I forgot to mention is that whenever you are experiencing some TypeScript or ID issues like throwing error here that the about page is not recognized or whatever strange behavior, you need to just reload your ID or even the TS server, but I prefer reloading completely the ID and the errors are gone. If the errors are not gone, you can stop and again start the development server, or if this event didn't work, you can stop your development server and remove this route3.gen file and again run the development server and all of the errors will be gone. Just a tip for you to know. Now let me just show you the final project. You can see here we have categories, nested category system, products, and all of these. And because of that, we need to implement a very simple mock backend for application for you to handle loading states, getting data, reading data from URLs, the categories IDs, product IDs, handle authentication, and so much other stuff. Now to create a mock backend, just head over to the lib folder here, create a new file called mock.ts or whatever that you want, and copy and paste this file from the repository and paste them here. This is the structure for our data. We have an e-commerce site for our project, which we have categories. Each category is going to have some subcategories, and subcategories contain products. So this is just to give you an idea. For the blog part of our application, based on different locales, whether it's French, English, or whatever, we're going to have some categories, and each category is going to have some posts. We have an admin site, which will have some reports, just to show you how authentication works with this library, and also contact us page. And then I'm going to extract the types from this general type here, and these are the data created from this data type that we just seen earlier. Our categories are going to have an ID, name, and other related stuff. Then at the end, we're going to create some functions And imagine our mock data variable is like a database, and these are our endpoints or whatever that whenever we call them, they're going to return us our desired data. And also by adding a few milliseconds delay to simulate a real-time scenario. For example, get categories, get subcategories, get products, search products, which will get the parameters from URL, the topics for our blog, get reports, get countries, and this is it. So we're going to use them in our project. Now let me just save and close everything. Then open the File Explorer, and here we can have two approaches whenever we want to create routes inside the routes folder. One of them is to create, for example, different folders and nest them inside each other, for example, like this. Or for simple scenarios, like for example, a very simple contact us page, we can use the flat routes that TanStack Router provides. So for example, instead of nesting folders in each other, I can simply create a contact us page.tsx, then just make sure that your development server is running, then another one for getting the country ID.tsx. I just remove the ID from the name of it for simplicity, and also the city for our contact us page. So here we have a nested contact us page. Let me show you what is it. This is the final project, and here in the contact us, you see that first of all we have an entry point for our contact us page where the user should select his desired country, and you see that the URL will be changed, and then here from the product selected country he can select his desired city, and at the end whenever user click on his desired city, you see that inside the URL everything is corresponding correctly. So here again, if I refresh the page, you see that the state is exactly the same. So as you can see here, we have a nested scenario. First of all, we have an entry point, the country, and the city ID. So this is the exact thing we just created here. We have our entry point here. We have access to the country from URL, and at the end, we have access to country and the city inside the page. Also, we could have done this by using the nested system. For example, I can create a contact us folder, inside it a country folder, and inside it a city folder. And for each folder, for example, I can create a route.tsx file, but for this scenario, the flat routing solution is more than enough. So let me just remove this here. So head over to the contact us route here. Then I can create a loader function which is responsible to fetch data needed for this route. So whenever we are creating a file route here, we can pass a loader function which communicates with your API endpoints or your server. And here inside it, I can create a new variable called countries or whatever. Let me put an arrow here. And then I'm going to await for countries to be fetched from our mock file here. And at the end, I just simply return the countries object here like this. Also, you can specify your error components or whatever that happens here. And for now, I just simply pass a pending component. Whenever the data are loading, you can use skeletons, shimmers, or whatever that you want by simply I here pass, for example, something like countries are loading or whatever, loading like this. And here, let me just remove this text here. I just simply add a little bit of spacing between elements. Then I just simply add a heading, for example, what country are you at, with the class name of heading. And then here, I just simply need to render the list of countries. So I need to access to the countries that we have got from our server here inside our component. And this is very easy. Just create a constant here and use the use loader data on our route object exactly here. And then here inside it, we have access to the countries here. And now we can map over our countries, and I'm gonna call each iteration country. Then I simply return a link component, and don't forget to pass the country.name as a key here. For the class name of it, I simply pass the card class name. Whenever it's active, I simply pass the class name of active card. For the text inside it, I just simply put a span here, and simply I just render the name of the country, and I just add a style to it. After that, we need to specify that whenever the user click on each country, where should he go? So by the help of the IntelliSense, whenever the user clicks on any country, I need them to go to the country page. And now the TypeScript is telling us that the params is required because we are redirecting the user to a route that it needs parameter. So you just need to open the params object here, and as you can see, the IntelliSense is helping us out. And for the parameter, country parameter, I'll just pass the country.name, and the TypeScript is satisfied. Now we just need to add this contact us page to our navbar. So head over to the navbar and create a new entry for your contact us page. And inside the application, if you head over to our contact us page, we see that the loading is shown to us very fast, and we're going to discuss it in a few moments, what is happening for preloading, prefetching, and so much other stuff. But now you see that the list of countries is here. Now we need to also render the other parts of this route. For example, here the user needs to see the cities of this country. Now for the country page, first of all, as before, I need to get the data from our source. So I'm going to need to get the cities by calling the getCities function. But as you can see, we need to pass our country here. So where should we get the country? We can easily get them from this params object. And as you can see here, we have access to the country here. And now if cities.length is 0, it means that there are no cities, and we need to throw a not found error to the user. Otherwise, we just simply return the list of cities. And for the pend component, I just simply return cities. Cities are loading here. And now here, I just again add spacing, then render the cities heading, and then I'm gonna map over the cities here. But first of all, I need to get it from the use loader data on our route. Then I'm gonna map over them, and then I just simply render a link here with the text of, with the title of CD, with the class name of card, active properties of active card, and for the key of it, I just simply pass the CD for now. And whenever the user click on a CD, I need them to go to the country/city route. Then I need to specify the params here. If I open the IntelliSense popover here, you see that first of all, I need to pass the city parameter here, which is reasonable, but I also need to pass the country here, which is not reasonable to pass the country here, because currently I am at the country route here. So it's not reasonable for me to pass the city here and also the country here, although I have access to it, but I do not prefer to do it. So if I remove it here, you see that the TypeScript is not happy and is telling me that I should pass country here. To overcome this issue, TanStack Router provides us an amazing property called from. So here I can specify that from which route I'm trying to do this navigation. So I'm here at the current country route. And now the TanStack Router is smart enough that whenever we are navigating from this route to this route, there is no need for us to pass the country here, and it is optional and it is handled for us automatically. So like the two property, the from property is also a very important property that you might need it sometimes. Now if you head over to application and refresh the page, you see that whenever we click on a country, nothing happens. This is because in the parent route of our country route, we need to simply pass the outlet here and import it from the TanStack Router. And with this way, we can handle nested routes for application. And now here, if we head over to application, you see that whenever, let me just refresh the page. Whenever I switch the country, the list of cities are automatically loaded and shown to the user. Then we need to handle the city part of it. But before we continue, I just need to show you something else. If I refresh the page, you see that the countries are loading, pending component are shown to us. And if I head over to the contact us page the starting point. And if I refresh the page, you see that we have countries are loading text here. And if I click on any country here, you see that it takes the pending component for the loading state of our cities. But there is something a little bit off here. Whenever we create on a country, as you can see, the loading text is not shown to us instantly. The reason for this is that TanStack Router, by doing this, wants to reduce loading flickers by adding a little bit of offset time to show loading states. If you want to control this behavior, which I prefer you not to, just head over to your app.tsx file, and here you can globally customize your router. And the setting for that is default pending milliseconds, and by default I think it's exactly 1 second here, and you can, for example, reduce it to 0 for you to see instant loading states, and hit save. And if I refresh the page, you see that instantly the loading states are shown to us here. And after that, if we want to head back to the pages, we see that the data has been fetched and cached perfectly. And also, let me just simply add the TanStack Router DevTools. And here, as you can see, we have a very simple but powerful DevTools for TanStack Router. For example, if I refresh the page, you see that whenever a loading is happening, or we have our routes here, our matches, whatever that happens here, we can use these DevTools, and sometimes it can save a lot of time for us. We have the states of our route, is loading, is transitioning, default pending in milliseconds, and so much other stuff that might come in handy. Let me just close it for now. Another really cool thing to do is that you can preload your routes on demand. Imagine that whenever the user is hovering over this link here, he expects that whenever he clicks on this button here, instantly the cities has been loaded behind the scene. But currently by default, this setting has been set to false. So we have no preloading at all. To enable it, just head over to your root.tsx file, not root, inside app.tsx, and here you can add the default preload, for example, to something like viewport, render, intent, or whatever. Intent means whenever the user hovers over the link, and behind the scene we can preload our page. Also, you can do this manually for your desired links, and even if I head over to the nav link here, you can add preload, for example, for your navbar links or whatever. But for now, I just prefer to enable preload by intent globally for my application. Hit save. Now, if I refresh the page and, for example, click on England, suddenly you see that the loading is shown to me. But if I hover over a link here, preloading is being done behind the scenes. And after that, if I click on it, you see that instantly all of the links has been loaded, which is a very perfect, a very amazing feature of TanStack Router library. And if I want to show you what is happening, for example, here in the loader here, I just simply add a text, for example, cities are loading or whatever. And now if we open up our console and hover over a link here, you see that the loader function of country page is being run automatically according to our expectations, which is perfect. Now that we have learned prefetching, preloading in TanStack Router, let me just remove this and let us just implement the city page for our contact us. And here in the loader function here, I need to have access to the country and city on the parameter here. And then, for example, I can first of all get the cities like this. And if the cities array does not include the city in the parameter, I just simply throw a not found here. And at the end, if everything is correct, I simply return the city here. And for the pending component, simply return city. City is loading. And for the component, just get the city from the loader. And then here, just simply render the selected city, the class name of heading, and with the text of city with the title class name. And now you see that whenever we click on a city here, nothing happens because we need to also add our outlet here because we are creating complex nested routing system and we need to nest different components inside each other. And now if you refresh the page, you see that everything is working as expected, and we have a very well structured nested layout for our contact us page, and we learned how to get parameters from URL, load data, pending state, preloading, and so much other stuff. Another cool feature of this library is that it has parallel fetching automatic. So if you recall, we are doing 3 API calls to render this page, this city page, and each API call exactly takes 1 second. 1 second for this, 1 second for this, and 1 second for this. But if I refresh the page, you see that everything is loaded together because of parallel fetching. You can add console logs to see what exactly is happening, but all of the 3 loader functions are being run together because we are at this level of our application. Now, let's implement a much complex nested layout for our application. Here, we have list of categories, subcategories, products, and product details itself. As you can see, we have 4 nested routes here that everything is working perfectly together. Let's implement it. Now, close everything here. Here, instead of creating my categories structure as flat routes like this, I prefer them to be inside and nested inside folders because it's readable and understandable. And because the categories page is the public side of my application, for better organization, I just simply create a route group like this using parentheses called public. And then for better organizing my project structure, I simply pass all of my public routes inside. If you are coming from Next.js, it's pretty similar to you, and this does not affect the routing system, URLs, or whatever. This is just for better folder structure. And inside it, I just create the categories folder. Inside it, I just create a route.tsx file. Also, I could have created an index.tsx file, but because we need to nest different routes inside each other, route is the correct choice here. But if we needed a standalone route, the index.tsx file is enough, but here we are working with nested structure. Then here inside it, create another folder called category ID, $, category ID. Inside it, first of all, create the route.tsx. Again, inside it, create a new folder called $subcategory ID. Inside it, create the route.tsx. And again, inside it, create the last part of our nested structure called product ID. And then inside it, create the route.tsx. Now let me just close everything, and inside the root file here, just add the categories here. Hit save. Now let me just collapse everything here. We're gonna start with the first route.tsx inside the categories folder here. So here, I just need to get the categories again from our makefile, return them. We're just doing loading state and also error state. For example, if something went wrong during getting this data. And this is similar to the thing that we just done for the contact us page. I just simply return this div here. First of all, I need to get the categories from route.useLoaderData as before, import the link, and then I just simply render the categories title, map over the categories, and navigate user to the correct page whenever they are clicking on the category card itself, and don't forget to import the outlet here. And now if you head over to the categories page here, you see that everything is working as expected. And imagine that I intentionally threw a new error here like this. And as you can see here, if I refresh the page, you see that the error component is here and you can do whatever that you want with it. But let me just remove it for now. Now for the category ID here, just simply pass this loader function here and throw a not found error whenever there are no subcategories found from our mock function with this pending component. And then as before, I just simply get the subcategories from our loader, render headings, and map over the subcategories card here, specifying the destination and the from property that, if you recall earlier, if I don't pass it, I need to also pass the current category ID parameter here. But this is a cool feature of TanStack Router, And don't forget to import the outlet as before. Now for the subcategory ID here, this is mostly the same, just import the correct imports and also render the data again as before. And I'm not gonna explain them one by one, but they are mostly similar logic wise. And for the last part, for the product ID route here, I just need to access the product ID on the parameters here and get the product and throw a not found here. And then I just simply render the product details here. The thing that I just forgot to show you is that inside the route.tsx, inside subcategory ID here, you see that I have exactly provided the hash of the product ID here. So whenever the user click on this link, it will automatically scroll him exactly to the product details page. I'm going to show you in a few moments. And now here, if I click on category, the subcategories will be shown. If I click on a subcategory, the products of that subcategory will be shown. If I click on a product here, you see that the product details will be shown. And imagine if the page is too long and whenever the user click on a product here, it will automatically scroll to the product details ID, and you can change the behavior of scrolling with CSS. You can add a smooth scrolling or whatever that you want. That was hash scrolling provided by TanStack Router. Now, this was one of the most complex scenarios that you might encounter in real-time applications. A very nested category, nested URL structure here. We have category ID, subcategory ID, product ID, and even the hash ID inside the URL itself, all of them handled with the most amount of possible type safety. Now let's head over and continue with the tutorial. One of the coolest features of TanStack Router library is how it handles the query parameters on the URL. Imagine that I have a very complex filters for my application and for example for my products page that for example the user can enter, change, sort, page and filter, and all of them are inside the URL with the most possible amount of type safety during compile time and even inside the runtime. For example, if I try to change and manipulate something here, you see that it automatically redirected to the correct page. If I try to, for example, pass something else for the page here, you see that it automatically corrected here without throwing any errors. If I try to change a filter here, this button is not a programmatic button. You can right click on it and copy the link here, and for example you can pass it to your colleagues or whatever that you want. So let's implement this complex query parameters situation which can be handled very easily with the power of TanStack Router. To implement a robust search page for application, just inside the public group here, create a new folder called search, and inside it create the route.tsx file here. And here inside the config options here, you can pass the validate search here. You can manually validate the search parameters by getting the search as the callback here, and for example check whether it contains different variables, different types and so much other stuff. But here we want to use Zot here for validating our runtime values, which TanStack Router is supporting Zot without any extra dependencies, and we just installed Zot earlier. You can create your schema, Zot schema here, but I really prefer to separate the logic of my application. So here I create a folder called -types to ignore it from the routing system, but with respect into collocation. And then inside it, I'm going to create a new file called search schema here. And here, I just need to simply paste this Zot schema here. I'm talking about this. This is our filter schema here. We have page, filter, and sort options here. I want my page be a number, and when the user did not provide it, default to 1. And whenever the user tries to enter some strange values, for example, a text or a sentence or whatever for the page query parameter, instead of throwing an error, I just simply default it and catch it with the 1 value. The same for the filter option here. When the user tries to, for example, enter an object here or whatever, I'm going to catch it with an empty string. And then for the sort options, I'm using enums on ZOD, and default option is ascending, and whenever the values is wrong, it will default to ascending. Here we just saw it earlier. And then I'm gonna extract the type of this search schema to use it inside the TypeScript compile time itself. So that is for our ZOD schema, and the validator for our search parameters inside our search route. So here in the search route, just simply pass the search schema here, as simple as this. Now I want to load the products list according to the search parameters on the URL. And the way that I can access it is using the depths object here. And then I have access to the search parameter. But as you can see, currently the TypeScript cannot infer the correct type of my search variables from this validate search option here. And it thinks that the type of search here is any. To solve it, I just need to specify the loader depths by simply just getting the search from here and then again return it here. As you can see here, the TypeScript now is happy and is correctly inferring the search query types from this validate search and from this ZOD schema here. Now here inside the loader function here, I can define the products list here, and then I'm gonna provide the search options here to the search products function from my mock function, and then I simply pass the search here, and at the end I just simply return the products list. Now I just need to simply render the products that I got from the loader data on my route, and then I just simply redirect user to the correct page whenever he clicks on a route, a product card here by these parameters. And now we need to here define our filter panel here, but I'm not gonna create it here because it will clutter our file and route component very much. So we're gonna separate the filter inputs from our route component. So inside the search folder here, create a new folder called components here, and inside it create a new component called filterpanel.tsx. Inside it create a filter panel component, and then at the end export default filter panel like this. Then inside it, first of all, I need to define the filter input and its setter. Set filter input for the UI input fields, and it's a simple state with the initial value of nothing. Again, for the page input and the set page input, which is responsible to keep track of the page of the user. So I just simply pass the first page here. But imagine that I want to make the initial values of these fields and filters the same thing that it is on the current URL. So I need to have access to the URL inside this filter panel. One thing that I can do is that I can pass the complete route object from parent to this file. But in complex components, it will cause some props drilling. So I really prefer to not pass not necessary properties from parent to this filter panel here. And TanStack Router has us covered. To do that, we just need to simply create a new constant outside the React lifecycle. I'm going to call it search router API, and then I'm going to get route API from TanStack Router, and then by the help of IntelliSense, I can get the logic for the public search here. So this search router API is exactly equivalent to this route component here. So instead of passing this to the filter panel here, which we will implement in a few moments, we just can use the get route API and pass the route address that we want. And as before, I have access to many things. For example, I have access to the use loader data and many other stuff. But I need to access the search parameters on the URL on first mount. So I can use the use search hook on the search router API, and inside it, I have access to my search parameters here, very type safe, and it is like magic. I have access to filter on the URL, page, and this sort without needing me to create a context or pass anything to this component here. All of this is handling by TanStack Router under the hood and by the using of a route tree automatically generated file here. So now here for the initial value, I just simply pass the corresponding value. So for the page also, I simply pass the page number here, but because the input fields are automatically a string by default, I just simply change the type of this to a string to make things easier. And then I create a get search parameters here, and I then import the search schema, search params from search schema file here. And then I'm going to use this function to render the destination for each filter button that we're going to add them below. So here for the UI part of stuff, simply return a div with the class name of space y3, create another div, and inside it create a label with the class name of label. Inside it, just put the filter text here and render an input here with the class name of input, type of text, the value of filter input, and for the unchanged handler, just pass the set filter input eTarget.value. And also below it, beside it, create a link function with the text of apply filter with the class name of outlined button with the destination of search. And here we need to pass the search parameters, and we can get them by using the get search params function that we just created here. And then we need to pass the filter here, exactly the filter input value the user has entered. Now let me just head over to the root.tsx and add the search route here to our navbar, and then don't forget to import the filter panel here inside the main entry of search route. And here, as you can see, if I enter anything here and click on apply, you see that the filter has been updated on the URL, and because there is a latest here and it's containing the test phrase here, you see that the list has been filtered automatically. And if you click on this, we will automatically head over to the categories page, the complex nested categories page. Very easy. Now let's head back to the search here and let's add the page filter and the sort filter also here. Again, head over to the chat panel, filter panel here, and here below this div here, create another div, create a new label called page with the class name of label. Inside it, render a simple input as before, input class name, type of number, minimum of 1 because our paging system is starting at 1, with the value of page input, and for the unchanged, just pass the set page input eTarget.value. And also here we need to have our pagination buttons. I just simply pass the space x2 to make buttons separated, and also I'm going to use inline for the display. First button, I'm going to call it go to page, and for the class name of it, just simply pass the outlined button. For the to property, just pass the search page, and for the search property here, use the get search params and pass the page input, but don't forget to parse the string here, parse int, this string convert it to an integer, and if the user has entered nothing, just default to 1 here. And for the previous and next links here, just pass the previous and next button like this, and specify and calculate the logic for the previous page like this. And also you can disable it if the page is currently at 1, and also do the same for the next one, which is pretty simple, and add +1 to the current page to the URL. And to save time, exactly here after this div here, just add the sort options input here, input the sort options from search schema, and for each of them create and render a value, a link component that will navigate the user to the correct page with the correct sort option and render the text for it. And for you to see better what is happening, I just simply return and render the search parameters by using JSON stringify. Now, if you head over to our application, let me just refresh the page. Here, we see that everything is working as planned. If I try to go to the next page, you can see the URL will be changed automatically. If I want to head over to a desired page, I can use this button here. I can click on previous page, but it will be disabled whenever that I am on first page. I can change the sorting orders by using these buttons and also apply different filters like this. And if the user tries to enter some different values, it will be cached automatically. If the user wants to, for example, enter an invalid page, it will be cached to one value, the same thing that we just defined. And the URL here is exactly the thing that we just defined for application. It's type safe. And this is a very powerful tool provided by TanStack Router. Another one of coolest features of TanStack Router is the router context, that we can do operations before loading, before loaders, before pages being loaded. We can add authentications, define roles, and many other stuff by using the router context for our routing system provided by TanStack Router. So let's implement a very powerful context to handle authorization for our application. Now you need to head over to the, let me just collapse everything here. You need to head over to the root.tsx file, and here I just need to define my user roles or whatever that you want. My application is going to need an admin and also a client here, and also sometimes when the user is not logged in, the role is going to be null. And also for the context itself, I just simply create a router context type. I define the role as user role here. Also, I define some actions for my context here, which is highly recommended. I define the login, logout actions like this, and I'll also need some utility variables. For example, is admin, is client, and also is authenticated with the type of boolean here. And instead of doing this, you just need to export cons route. Instead of creating a root route, you can create root route, but this time with context. Then you just need to pass the router context as a generic here, and then as before, just pass the root component here for your component. Now here inside any routes, you have access to the context, use route context, and the types that we just defined on our context. For example, I have access to is admin or whatever that I want. But before that, first of all, we need to wrap everything inside our provider. Currently, we didn't define any provider for our TanStack Router. So let's do it. A quick reminder, if you're picking up valuable tips, hitting that like button really helps the channel. Thanks for your support. To do that, you just need to head over to the app.tsx file. And here the TypeScript is not happy because we need to pass the context, the initial context state, because currently we are using create root route with context this time. So here just define initial role to null, login to an empty function, the same for logout, is admin is equal to false, is client is equal to false, and also is authenticated is equal to false. And then here in the app component here, we just need to initialize our router context here by using router context state, which we need to implement it ourselves. And then at the end, we just need to pass the router context state to the context here. Let's implement this function for now. Inside the lib folder here, create a new file called use router context state.tsx and paste this context initializer hook for your application. The hook is returning our router context that we just defined here. Let me just remove this unnecessary import. Then it's gonna read the user role from the local storage and return it and initialize the role state on this hook from our local storage. And if there is nothing saved on our local storage, it will be defaulted to null. If there is any role here, we set on our local storage, otherwise we will remove it. For the login method here, there is nothing fancy here. We just need to set role here. For the logout, we just simply make the role null. And for the isAdmin, isClient, and isAuthenticated, we just create some utility variables. For example, if we want to know whether the user is admin or not, we just simply use this, and at the end we're gonna export all of the values at the end. But as you can see here, the TypeScript is not happy. The reason is that, let's head over to the router context here, and for the login I forgot to pass the role admin or client here. Now here everything is correct. Now inside the app.tsx, don't forget to import our newly created state hook. Now our project is now enhanced with our authentication context that we just defined now. Now let's implement the login page. Head over to the file explorer here and create a login.tsx file. But before that, let me just show you in the done project here. Imagine that our blog route is authenticated. So imagine that the user can see contact us, categories, search, but whenever he wants to log in or see the blog, it will automatically redirect it to the login page here. And imagine that after the user has clicked on blog and redirected to login, imagine that after login, I want him to be automatically redirected to the blog page. So in the URL, I'm going to save a search parameter called redirect. So after logging in, I'm 100% sure that where the user should be redirected. For example, something like this. And now as you can see, the user has been automatically redirected to the blog page here. So we need to implement this redirect functionality during implementing our login page. So keep this in mind. Now here, let me just first of all create the redirect search parameters by using zod, import zod, and then define the redirect value here to make things type safe and robust. And if there was nothing to be redirected to, just default it to an empty slash here. Then I just simply need to check, before everything, I simply need to check whether the user is authenticated or not. So I can use the before load settings here, then exactly like loader, it's gonna be of type async, and then I can do some checks before letting the loaders to be run and the component be shown. So here in this callback, I have access to context and the search parameters. And here, first of all, I can get the isAdmin and isAuthenticated from this context here. And if the user is authenticated, I just simply return him and redirect him to the corresponding page. So I'm gonna use the redirect function, and then I just simply pass the to, and if the user is admin, I just simply redirect him to the admin page, which we didn't implement it yet, and otherwise I just simply redirect him to the client page. And we're gonna implement these pages in a few moments. And now the TypeScript is not happy because of that, but we're gonna fix them in a few moments. But if you recall, the user might go to other pages, the blog example that I just showed you. So if there is anything, any redirect parameters, search parameters on the URL, first of all, I check with it, and if there was no search on URL, I just simply, depending on the user role, redirect to the corresponding page. And also for the pending component, I just simply render a simple loading text. Now for the function, for the component itself, I just simply need to return a login form here, get the login function from my route context here, and here I'm gonna define a simple username authentication for my application. I just need a very simple username field for user to log in to the application for simplicity. And here I'm gonna create a new input here with the class name of input, type of text, placeholder of username, value of username. Then for the unchange of it, I just simply, as before, set username with the value of our event, and then I'm going to autofocus this component here for simplicity and make things easier. And then I'm going to create the submit button or login button here with the class name of button, type of submit, and for the onclick handler of it. And here I just simply do a check here. If the entered user name was admin, I just simply log in with admin here, and otherwise I just simply user log in the user with the client role here, which is a mock authentication system. And at the end, after login, I just simply navigate the user, the page to the desired page. But first of all, I need to define the navigate by using the use navigate on our route. And now here, I can redirect the user to the page that he wanted first. And also don't forget to get the search from use search hook on the route object. And after that, when the user logs into our system, he will be automatically redirected to his desired page. For example, if the user tries to open the admin page, he will be redirected to login page automatically. And after that, if the user is logged in successfully, he will be redirected to his desired page. Very effective user experience. But the problem here is that we are changing and defining our context here. So we need a way that tells TanStack Router context to be invalidated and to will be calculated again with the new values. So we need to invalidate our router. So I just simply get the router from use router. You don't need to add route here. You can import it directly from TanStack Router. And then before redirecting and navigating user to other page, you just need to simply invalidate the context on your global router. Now that was it for the login scenario, which at the first glance is pretty simple, but it is doing for us a lot of job by authenticating the users and also navigating the user to the desired pages. Now we need to add this login page to our root layout, and here below the search here, I need to render login pages, admin and client pages here. So I need to have access to some values from the route context. So I need to get the logout is authenticated, is admin and also is client here. Then also I need to get the navigate from use.navigate and also the location because I need it, and you're gonna see why, and import it directly from TanStack Router. Now, if the user is of type client, I simply render a nav link for the account page or client page or whatever that you wanna name it, and I wanna redirect the user to the client page, client here, and we didn't implement this page yet, so we're gonna do it in a few moments. Then if the user is admin, simply like previous item, put the admin text on navbar and redirect the user to the admin page. And also if the user is authenticated, I simply render a sign out button. So I'm going to render button class name here. For the on-click of it, when the user wants to sign out, he needs to call the logout function. And after that, I need to navigate the user to the login page, and with the search parameters of redirect and also pass the current location as a search parameter. By doing this, whenever, for example, the user is on admin page and whenever he clicks on the sign out button on the navbar, he will be automatically redirected to the login page with the redirect search parameters on the URL, which after that we can redirect back the user to this page that he clicked sign out on. And also if the user is not authenticated, I just simply return a nav link. It redirects the user to the login page here. Now let's implement the client and admin routes for our application. So let me just save everything and close everything here, and inside the routes folder, create a new folder called _auth here. The reason that I use underscore here because I want to add, first of all, my authenticated routes here, my admin side, client side, and block side, and I want all of them to be authenticated. So there is a shared logic between all of them, although I do not want to break the structure of the URL. So by using the one underscore before any routes, we have created a pathless layout for our nesting other layouts. So imagine that I can do some stylings here, add some layouts, do some authentication, and all of the routes inside this folder here will be automatically wrapped inside that logic, but without changing the URL at all. So here in the auth folder, create a new file called route.tsx, and then here I just simply need to return the outlet here for other nested layouts inside this pathless layout. And also you can do some stylings here. For example, you can add whatever items or wrappers around the outlet here, but this is enough because I only want to do this pathless layout only for authentication. So here, before load everything, I simply pass an async function here as before. Then I'm going to get the context, and then the current location of the user. And if the user is not authenticated, I simply throw a redirect here like this to the login page with the search values of redirect equal to the current location of the user. And that's it. This is the thing that we need to check before letting other logics inside this pathless layout to be checked. So whenever the user is not authenticated at all, we just simply redirect him to the login page with the search queries. Now save everything and close everything here. Inside the auth folder here, create a new folder called admin, and inside it as before a route.tsx file. By now we are 100% sure that the user is authenticated. But before letting the user to be accessed to the admin page, I need to check his role. To do that, as before, I get the context from here and check if the user is not admin. I redirect him to the client page here because we didn't implement it yet. So we know the user is authenticated, so there is no need to check it again. And if the user is authenticated but is trying to access the admin route whenever he's client, we should redirect him to the client. And at the end, I just simply render an outlet here because I'm going to nest some other routes inside this admin file for route. And then we just need to do the same thing, but this time for the client route. And then before load everything, again, we just need to get the context here. If the user is not a client, I just simply redirect him to the admin page. That's it, and render an outlet here. Hit save. Now that we have fully implemented our authorization system, let's see it in action. Let's head over to the login page and try to log in. You see that nothing special happens here. But whenever I try to refresh the page manually, you see that everything is correct. The sign out button is here, account button is here, and so much other stuff. The reason is that whenever I try to log in like this, sometimes the context value or the search parameters or the redirect values lag behind with the current state of the application. And just by examining a little bit, I realized that invalidation on context sometimes might not work. And this is an open issue on the project repository. And also I have found a temporary solution, which is more than enough for now on for this tutorial. We're going to use flush sync from React, although it's not recommended by React documentation itself, but it's a way to update the UI manually synchronously on the same thread. So we need to head over to the use router context state here. This is the place that we have created our getters and setters for our context state here. And the problem here is that sometimes the set role sometimes lag behind, and this is because of the React nature here. And by wrapping it inside the flush sync imported from React and pass it as a callback here, the issue will be temporarily gone. So hit save. And now inside the application, whenever I try to log in, you see that everything is working perfectly. And imagine I am currently on the account page. The account corresponds to the client route. And now if I try to sign out, you see that I have been redirected to the login page, but with the redirect value of client. So whenever I try to log in with whatever value, you see that I've been correctly redirected to the corresponding page. Or imagine that I want to head over to the admin page when I'm not logged in. You see that the admin currently is on the URL, and whenever I try to log in, you see that I've been correctly redirected to the admin page. You can check it out by adding authorization to different pages. And now we're going to see it also with the blog route that we're going to implement in a few moments. Now let's continue with the tutorial from this point. Inside the client folder here, create a new folder called files. And here inside it again, create an empty folder with the name of $sign only, nothing more. And inside it, create index.tsx file here. This is called a splat route. And we're gonna see what can we do with it in a few moments. To access to the value on the URL, as before, we can do the route.use params here. And you see that we have a value here called splat here. To show you what it is, I simply create an input, for example, called file path and its setter with the initial value of the splat itself. Now inside the component, let me just remove unnecessary stuff here. Here I create a simple input with the class name of input here with the type of text, value of file path, and also the unchanged as before. Perfect. Now I'm going to create a new link. For example, I'm going to call it go to file. Imagine that we are creating a file manager for our admin dashboard. For the class name, as before, I simply pass the button here and don't forget to import it. And for the destination of it, I simply use the created path. And for the params, I simply, as before, pass the file path for the splat. And now if the splat, if it has value, I simply return an issue tag showing its value with the class name of title. Otherwise, I simply return no file found, for example, like this. And now inside the file explorer here, inside the client route, just create here and add the link to the file path here by doing this. And I'm gonna make it a nav link as before. And I'm gonna specify the client files splat route. Hit save. Now inside the application, let me just sign out. And again, signing as a simple client. And now if I click on this, you see that whatever that I type on the URL here, imagine that I have a file manager and I have a file path like this separated by different slash. For example, I have this and at the end I have a file called script.ts or whatever. And as you can see here, although it has the structure of the URL, but it did not break our application and we can do whatever that we want with this way. So from this point, from the point that we have put $sign, we can catch all of the values entered here as a splat value and we can do whatever that we want. Perfect. Now close everything here and inside the admin folder here, just create a simple file called, for example, reports.tsx, and I just simply pass a very simple reports dashboard, which is gonna represent the user a simple analytics data. Hit save. Also for the main route of admin, I simply change current file to this. As before the before load, we didn't change it. And here just we render an outlet and also the link to the reports for now. Now create categories and inside it route.tsx and again create another folder inside it called category ID and inside it create route.tsx. Do not mix it up with the thing that we have on public layer of application. Imagine that we have a dashboard, that there is a public side and a admin side, and we can do CRUD operations on our categories. This is just to give you ideas. Inside the categories route, I just simply paste this here as before, a simple loader and showing the list of categories to the user, nothing new. And also for the category page itself, just simply pass this here. And as I told you before, if you have anything related to your ID, compile errors, and so much other stuff, you can try to restart the dev server, reload the IDE, and even removing this route tree file manually. Hit save, but I did a mistake, and because there was no need to make this file a route.tsx and index.tsx file is enough because we do not want to nest everything inside it. And although both of them are acceptable, but I prefer to do it like this to prevent misunderstanding in the future. And as before, there is nothing fancy here, just handling whether the category is there or not and display the desired value here. And now just head over again to the admin route here, and here just create another link, but for the categories page on admin side, like this, nothing new here. And let me just sign out and try to sign in with admin role here. And you see that we have our reports page and our categories page. Nothing new till now, but I want to show you something new. Imagine that I want to create a create page for the categories CRUD here. Although I want it to be with this URL here, currently it's throwing me this error, the not found error, because we didn't implement it yet. But I do not want to be nested here in the categories path. So although the URLs show something else, I want the create category page not being nested inside here. To do that, here outside the categories folder here and at the admin folder, create a new file called categories.create.tsx for now. And now here, if I head over to the categories/create, you see that my new component is here. But as I told you before, I do not want this component to be nested in this layout here. Also, there is another problem here. Although we are not at the categories page exactly, the active properties are activated, which is I don't want. So we just need to head over to the route.tsx here, and then for the active options here, you just pass the exact to true. And as you can see here, because we are not exactly at the categories page here, this is not selected. And also by adding an underscore suffix at the end of the categories word here, and now if I head over to the application here and go to the create route, we see that although it's inside the categories URL, but it's not nested inside it. And also let me just head over to the categories route here, and here just create a new link to create new category with the class name of button, destination of admin categories, create, and that's it. But let me just put it above here. Perfect. And now if I click on this, you see that this is not nested inside anything, but if I click on categories, you see that we have the list of categories, which is a very powerful feature of TanStack Router library. You can use it in any different scenarios. Now for the last part of the tutorial, imagine that our hypothetical application has a blog section that is authorized only for authenticated users, and also it's multi-language. To do that, we need to create optional route parameters, because as you know, many of the websites, although they are multi-language, but they have a default locale, for example, the English, and whenever the language is set to English, we do not see that parameter in the URL. And to create optional route, just simply use the syntax, curly braces, dash, $, and whatever the name of your variable here. Hit enter, and inside it, create the blog folder. Inside it, create the route.tsx file. Inside it, create a new folder called topic ID. Inside again, create route.tsx, and also inside the topic ID, create a new folder called post ID, and inside it, create route.tsx. Inside the main entry for our blog here, I just need to simply create a loader here. So it's going to be of type async, and let me just complete the arrow function here. We have params here, and inside the params, we have optional locale here because we force it to be optional by using the file naming conventions. And here inside it, if the current locale is not in this array, includes locale, and if it's not provided, we just simply default to English. If it's yes, we just simply redirect the user to the blog destination, also with the parameters of locale being undefined, because we are 100% sure that the user did not intend to use a language other than English or whatever our default locale is. And everything, if it's all right, we just get the topics from our mock functions, and we just simply pass the locale, and by now we are 100% sure that the locale is of type locale on our data. And then we are going to return the topic here, or in other words, the topics. Now for the file here, for the component here, just I get the topics from use loader data and also the locale itself from use params here. Then here, I just simply add a class name of specify2 as before, and inside it, I just simply return a block heading with the class name of heading. And first of all, I let the user to select his desired language. For example, select your language. And here I'm going to create a new div, the class name of x2. And then I'm going to map over the locales on my application. And for each iteration, I simply render a link component with the value of locale inside it. For the class name, I just simply pass the outline button. And for the active props, I simply pass bg green 500 with the text of white. Then I'm going to redirect the user to the blog page, but this time with their desired locale. And for the key, don't forget to pass the item here, and that's it. And now after that, I just need to simply render the topics. Here, the class name of heading, the list of topics as before with the class name of list. And then I'm going to map over the topics like this. And there is nothing new here. We just simply mapping over the topics and showing corresponding topic card for it. Hit save. And don't forget to add outlet here. Perfect. And now for the topic page itself, just paste this code here. There's nothing new here. Only pay attention to this from property. For you do not need pass the topic ID or locale here, and hit save. And also there is an error in this file for what? You see that the locale is not used here because I accidentally put it here. Hit save. And for the post ID route itself, just paste this simple file here. You're just getting post ID from parameters, and that's it. And we are going to render it at the end. Now inside the root file, don't forget to add the blog here, and you should put it like this. And now if I click on blog here, you see that everything is working perfectly. If I click on Spanish, you see that the values are Spanish, and wherever that I click on, you see that the corresponding post has been shown to me. And if I try to remove the locale from the URL, you see that it will be default to English. And if I try to put something that it's not a locale, you see that I will be redirected to the blog without any locale in the URL, which is perfect. Also, as I told you, because we have put the blog inside authorized routes, whenever that I sign out, I cannot access the blog anymore. But if I try to log in, you see that I've been automatically redirected to the blog page because we're doing redirecting depending on the previous user destination. And that wraps up our TanStack Router tutorial. We've covered everything from basic setup to advanced patterns with full type safety throughout. TanStack Router gives you the best of both worlds, file-based organization with programmatic power, all backed by TypeScript's robust type system. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more technical deep dives. Drop any questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching.